Are you tired of blowing out your back at the bathtub while washing your dog or subjecting your canine to a water torture bath while leashed up to a post outside? Now there's a far more effective way to wash your pet while saving your back and keeping your dog happy. It's called Booster Bath, a portable bathtub on legs. Head over to boosterbath.com, one word, and pick one up. Available in 3 sizes, this tub system features a drain, a soap cubby, and water-controlling wand. This tub conveniently breaks down to be stored when not in use. Want to save 10% on your first-time purchase? Head over and sign up today to make that happen. Boosterbath.com. This is the Hard Parking Podcast, brought to you by Wright Honda out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I am your host, Jay Finning. Barrett Jackson is coming up, and I did a short video with Jane DeMelio, the director of marketing over at Wright Honda and Wright Toyota, and we took the Phoenix Yellow, number 51 of 600, Honda Civic Type R, down the street to a photo shoot at Barrett Jackson. We filmed a short video, and you can actually see that video on Barrett Jackson's website. Search for lot 722. The Civic will show up, and then click video. That's my 11 seconds of fame. This last weekend, we did an Instagram live video and joined Cody Walker's video for Reach Out Worldwide Foundation, which is a charity associated with the sale of this car. Cody Walker, youngest brother of Paul Walker, keeping the charity going. So that was pretty awesome. And he'll be coming out here March 25th for the Barrett Jackson auction when the car goes across the block. So it'll be really cool. Shout out to Mark Stoneman, Holland, Michigan, for sending the show the second email ever. Mark, I'm going to send you a coaster or something, because a lot of times on Monday mornings, by the time I wake up, since you're a few hours ahead of me, I get a text telling me the show was cool or good or just some sort of response. And I understand if you can't listen all the time. I understand if not everybody can listen all the time. There's a lot of shows that are my favorites that I don't even listen to all the time. But don't forget about me, for those of you out there. Check to make sure you're still subscribed, because what happens, especially with Apple, is if you don't listen to a show for a while, it'll stop downloading it. So you have to go back and say, yes, I'm still interested, and bring them down. So Mark, thank you for the email. I want to thank everybody else for listening to the show. If this is your first time, hopefully you stick around and give it a couple episodes, or maybe this is the one episode where all it takes is you hear something you love and you click subscribe. In fact, go ahead and click subscribe now. So what do a couple Honda Civics and your tax returns have in common? Well, John and Marcus of the Real Talk with Jam podcast is going to be joining me in a little bit to talk about that. Also, I'm a huge fan of the MCU. Those of you who have been with the show since the very beginning know that I don't really talk about stuff like that on here as much anymore, but huge fan. After the season finale of WandaVision on Disney Plus, I had a lot of things I wanted to say. So Tim from the Marvel Watchers podcast will be joining me as well. And we're going to talk about WandaVision and a little bit of the MCU. So spoiler alert, once we get to that point, if you have not seen WandaVision and you're going to see WandaVision, or you haven't seen the season finale, then you might want to skip that. If you're not in MCU or you haven't checked out WandaVision, but you're just curious, you might as well just listen. Well, never mind. Don't. And then, of course, I dip into the Q&A where I answer all your submitted questions on social media. First, I want to talk about the Jeep Cherokee. Chuck Hoskin Jr., Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation, is in the news. I pulled this up on Car and Driver, but I also found it on ABC News and a few other outlets. The tribal Cherokee Nation wants Jeep to stop using the word Cherokee. And I'm kind of conflicted on this. You know what? I don't understand. And here's a couple quotes he has. I'm sure this comes from a place that is well-intended, but it does not honor us by having our name plastered on the side of a car. He also adds, the best way to honor us is to learn about the sovereign government, our role in this country, our history, culture, and language, and have a meaningful dialogue with federally recognized tribes on cultural appropriateness. Look, Chuck, that's what we have history class for, and hopefully they're still teaching American history. I know it is a little skewed. Unskew it. This is what I learned about American Indians. They were the ones who taught the settlers how to survive. We betrayed them. We took their land. Everything you know about American history is about that. Is it something other than that? White man came in, screwed over the American Indians. And our pitiful way to say, we're sorry, you can have your casinos, we can't have casinos, and those people with a certain amount of American Indian blood get checks by the government. Is it enough to live on? No. My old boss gets a check and he used to rub it in our face. Hey, got my check. $200 this month. Got my check. So we all know this, but I don't know how one thing has anything to do with the other. Let's talk about the Jeep history a little bit. So in 1974, Jeep introduced a Cherokee. And over the years, they've had the Grand Cherokee. They've had a Jeep Comanche, which is like a pickup truck looking weird thing. And they have Mojave as a trim level to a Wrangler. It's 45 years now. Jeep has used the word Cherokee. And I'm sure at some point in the past, they've asked them to stop. In fact, they used Cherokee all the way up to 2001. And then they took a break and named it the Jeep Liberty. And then they brought the Cherokee back in 2013. So it's been 45 years, but this also sort of comes on the heels of the professional leagues and changing their name and last year's big push with Black Lives Matter. And this is a direct quote from Car and Driver. Last June, as protests over the death of George Floyd spurred discussions about racial justice, Chief Hoskins told the Wall Street Journal, "We hope the movement away from using tribes' names and depictions or selling products without our consent continues. We much prefer a cooperative effort than an adversarial one." Okay, so it sounds like he's willing to maybe negotiate with Jeep to some sort of a benefit. So an example of this is Florida State, the college. There was some controversy before about Florida State and the Florida State Seminoles, the actual Seminole Nation. And the agreement they came to with the college is the college is allowed to continue to use Chief, what's his name? Chief Arreola? No, Osceola. Anyway. The college is able to still use Florida State Seminoles in the war cry, but they also have to grant scholarships to born American Indian Seminoles. So born Seminoles, which is kind of cool. We don't know a lot about the conversations that Cherokee Nation has had with Jeep. We know that they've reached out a few times and they're not really getting much response. And at the end of the day, they still want Jeep to stop using the word Cherokee. But what if Jeep Chrysler were to say, hey, this is what we'll do for every percentage, because the Jeep Cherokee is a top seller every year. Of course, the Jeep and the Jeep Grand Cherokee, of course they would be. They're everyday SUVs. A portion of that goes toward the Cherokee Nation. We don't know if that offer's been made. We don't know if the offer has been made, but the numbers don't match up. But I can understand that. But just to be on the heels of all this other changes, I don't really understand that. Why not the Chicago Blackhawks? I don't have a problem with hockey. I don't have a problem with Blackhawks, but there's a little inconsistency here. Or maybe they have been forced to. I really couldn't find anything on that when I looked, and I didn't look this time. But some things I don't get. I don't get Uncle Ben's, removing Uncle Ben. I don't understand the Land O'Lakes butter, removing the American Indian woman from the Land O'Lakes butter. You know, there's a funny meme that's going around of that Land O'Lakes thing. It's like, remove the Indian, kept the land. How American. It's kind of ironic. And is it one of those institutionalized racism things where we don't think about that, which makes us guilty as well? I don't really subscribe to that as well. I don't like that at all. If it's a big deal, if it's offensive, get rid of it. But having the word Grand Cherokee or Cherokee on the side of a vehicle as vehicles that are strategically named for their ability to go anywhere and conquer anything, I don't know. That's a tough pill for me to swallow. But again, I don't have all the information. I understand the Washington Redskins being forced to change their name. I understand a little bit the Cleveland Indians being forced to change their logo, which that was a cool logo, that big, huge smile on the face and the feather. I mean, it makes everybody happy when you look at it. But if it's truly offensive to an entire nation of people, an entire culture, American Indian culture, get rid of it. But not if one or two chiefs from one or tribe or two tribes. It's the same thing where we can't even, now in school you can't say the national anthem before games in some cities. There is no more Christmas break. It's just winter holiday. There's no Easter anymore. It's just spring session, spring break, spring holiday. There's nothing wrong because if one person or one parent doesn't agree with it or doesn't want their child because of their religious beliefs joining in prayer with the rest of the class, that doesn't mean you have to change it for everyone. And hopefully this isn't one of those things. This isn't like tearing down everything that has to do with the Confederacy, which I understand that. I was a little split on that, but at the end of the day, I understand that because when the Confederate flag is used as a weapon of hate and a weapon of intimidation, I don't think that's going on with the Jeep Cherokee. I think it's just another facet of the modern movement of cancel culture. And going back to the Cleveland Indians baseball team, not only did they get rid of the logo, but they are no longer carrying the name forward, Cleveland Indians, past the 2021 season. They're going to change their name for the first time since 1915. And this isn't a sports podcast, but let's take a look at the 5 names that they're thinking about changing it to. The Cleveland Bootleggers, the Cleveland Rockers, the Cleveland River Fire, the Cleveland Spiders, the Cleveland Naps. The Naps. In honor of their star second baseman, Napoleon Knapp LaHoy. I don't know. I just feel like at some point we're going to be drinking and eating and looking at labels of things exactly the way they are intended for their purpose. All butter will have on the packaging is butter. Hell, there's a church right down the street. No pun intended. There's a church right down the street from my house, literally with a giant word on the side of the church that says church. Not church of this, not the first blah, blah church. It's just church. Like it fell out of some sort of a 90s video game when you're going around open world roaming and you need to find a church. It's like, there's one right there. Church. Getting back to this article with the Jeep. The CEO is open to ending the company use of the name Cherokee. It wouldn't be the first time. Like I said, they stopped using it in 2001 for 12 years. In my world, it's always been Grand Cherokee. But maybe they get rid of that too. They do have the Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer coming out. Anybody offended over that? Are we offended over Cowboys yet? Cowboys and Indians? Well, Indians. Are the Dallas Cowboys next because some rancher got upset that they're using the word cowboy? Maybe that's making too light of it. Let me know if it is. Let me know if I'm making way too light of this situation. Again, if it actually offends an entire group or a majority of a group, 51% majority, I get it. It's my ignorance if I don't. But I get it. I get Redskins. I don't really understand Cleveland Indians. I understand the logo. I don't understand having to rename the team. But here's what I do know. Chuck Hoskin Jr., Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation, is not a car guy. Coming up, Real Talk with Jam. It's time for the social media highlight of the week, brought to you by Ride Sold Online Vehicle Auction. Lowest fees in the industry. Head out to ridesold.com. Find your next car today. Today, our guest is Real Talk with Jam podcast, John and Marcus. It's been a long time, man.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having us. We're excited. It's been a while, but glad to be here.
Yeah, John, you were saying what? It's been decades, you're saying, or something like that.
Feels like it's been
We've
decades.
barely been around for a year, okay? So calm down, okay? Give Jay a break. He's got a successful podcast here. He's really working hard. He's got a lot of things going on. So just cut him some slack, okay?
All right.
Please.
I feel like it was just yesterday when I was on your guys' show, which that was celebrating episode, maybe, was it 50?
Oh, back when we had you on ours, Jay, that was like back over last summer, I think. Was it not, John?
I feel like it was like October-ish.
Like August or July, yeah, because I used to live in the Inland Empire before I moved to Orange County, and that was back in that time.
There was something significant about that episode. You reached a certain mark and you wanted to have people back on, or he wanted to have your early supporters on. So it was like a certain, I don't know, episode 50 or 40 or.
Oh, it was.
What was it, John?
Our huge increase in our social network followers.
Oh,
that's
right.
We hit like over 1,000 followers on Instagram. And, you were one of the first shows to reach out to us.
I think Jay was within the first, I don't know if it's as far as we can say the first 10, for sure within the first 50 followers.
Yeah.
For sure within the first 50. I don't know if we can go as far as say the first 10, but you were, right there at the beginning. I do definitely remember that. That's for sure.
So we brought you back.
And because we had maintained contact with you, and you had been a great supporter, reaching out to us, letting us know what you liked and didn't like as we kind of grew. So yeah, we really wanted to reach out, and because you were one of the first, because now obviously we've had such a great growth in our online community, but we wanted to make sure to say hello to the very start of it, which you were one of them. So that was part of that.
So I'm a little upset here because I was in one of your first 50, and I was on the show when you guys got to 1,000. I've been hovering around 1,300 followers, I feel, for like 2 years, which means I'm not doing something right.
You know what? Let's just say hashtags.
Yes.
Hashtags are our best friend. You know, for a while we were on a following spree and following a lot of podcasts just to get that base growing. But we reached the maximum, right? We couldn't follow any more pages.
7,500 is the max that Instagram will allow you to follow. And we had to go through and make sure we were just following podcasts. We were following other things too, different brand names,
the best
different famous people.
Marcus was following like a Fox affiliate in Phoenix. I mean, for what, right?
Okay, well, we were commenting on different stories and then kind of promoting us as well. Hey, you know, that's cool. And by the way, listen to our podcast. We were really pushing as best as we could. We were identified as spammers by many of these different pages.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we just really try to get out there as best as we could. That's just what we did. We just, any chance we could to get out there and reach somebody new, we tried it. And then if we were stopped or we had an obstacle, okay, then we got to try something else. We just pushed and pushed until we started growing.
Okay, so I need to hustle harder. Let's tell everybody who you guys are and why you're so damn special. Tell us a little bit about Real Talk with Jam.
Real Talk with Jam podcast. We're actually here in Southern California, specifically Orange County. So I'm John. Marcus is here joining me. So one day we sat down and said, you know, we have a lot of things to talk about. We have an opinion about everything. And we tend to talk a lot of, you know, nonsense. Why don't we just get together and do a podcast?
Yes. And I remember because John has experience with this from before. And, you know, he was looking to do another one. He was not sure, was he going to have a co-host? Was he going to do it by himself? And we talked, I actually approached him about it and said, hey, I have a wild thought. And I expected him to just reject it because I figured he'd think I'm a buffoon and I don't have any talent. And, you know, he's too good for me. I asked and said, could we try just recording one together? I was interested. I kind of wanted, it was something out of my comfort zone. And he agreed. And I was actually shocked. I thought he would truly say no. And he said yes, he would be willing to try. And I figured we would do one and it would be terrible. And he'd say, you're fired, basically, and we're not recording again. So we did it. You know, we had to come up with a name. And, you know, we had our initials, John, Marcus, John and Marcus, like, Jam's a word. We'll try it. You know, we, again, figuring that it wasn't even going to last, that John was going to get fed up with me and we were going to move on from it. And that was going to be it.
Here we are. And
now here we are. Like John said, I mean, we're getting ready to release episode 58 soon. We know we've already passed a year, been recording weekly. I definitely thought by episode 5, John would say enough. If we made it past 1, by 5, he was going to be done with me. And he was going to move on to somebody else or do his own thing.
Yeah.
I seriously thought that. I truly believe that. And even now, sometimes I still am like, when am I going to be replaced? He talked about replacing me and I'm like, I think next week or the episode after.
So what is Jam? Well, Jam, you know, we started off covering news and headlines and current events. And funny thing, Jay, we actually had a whole Excel spreadsheet with like over 100 different topics, right? We were supposed to cover. Well, when we launched, COVID-19 hit. So all of the coverage turned to COVID and we just followed it. We followed the COVID pandemic. We followed, you know, the protests that happened last year in 2020.
Yep.
You know, the George Floyd situation, of course. And we kept going. And Marcus and I were afraid that current events is overdone in the podcast community and it's just oversaturated. Well, that actually works really good for us. And our listener base is strong and they like it. So you want to hear current events? You want to hear a fresh perspective? Tune into our show. We cover everything and anything.
You guys play really well off each other. I think my favorite thing about you guys is you drive the same car.
Yes, we do.
Only difference is I have an EX model. Marcus still has the hubcaps. When he turns right, the hubcap goes flying the other direction.
Okay, it's not that bad, but yes, we are Civic people, Honda people for sure. I think, John, haven't you been for a while, just like I have Hondas, or didn't you had other?
My first car was a 1993 Honda Civic stick shift.
There you go.
Atta boy.
Great car. Let me tell you, car's still running. think it's over 1 million miles.
But you don't have it.
So no. It's up in Victorville for reference.
There you go.
If it comes down the hill, it's not going to go back up. So it stays up there.
It's over.
What color are your cars? Are they? I'm assuming they're the same color. Or are they just the same model?
Mine is a gray, and John's is more of a silver. So basically, both shades of gray. I mean, yeah.
But Marcus's car was initially black.
Yes, I had to repaint it. That's a whole nother story. Let me tell you something. Yeah, John and I, especially, in our show, we can talk about stuff. One thing I cannot do for sure, and Jay, maybe if I would have known you then, I should have talked to you. I cannot do cosmetic repairs on paint jobs if my life depends on it.
It's a skill set.
I messed up. I was trying to cover a scratch, turned into a whole project involving spray paint cans. And ended up being, okay, I got to take it for a professional job. They had to strip off all my mess and repaint the whole car from scratch. So, if you're looking for auto paint advice, don't come to our show because that is one thing me especially, maybe John, but not me.
I'll tell you what, I know one thing you are good with. That's taxes.
Oh, no.
So everything is relative, okay? Because, I don't know. Are you a CPA?
I wish, Jay. So I am an enrolled agent. What that is, basically, it is a credential offered by the IRS. It's the highest credential they offer for tax practitioners. I don't actively practice in terms of a business. Like I don't have side business. I always have wanted to, but never have actually gotten it off the ground. But, I've helped John, for example, with his taxes, helped, different people, family and friends with taxes. So, have done a couple of things with taxes here and there.
So on your episode, I think it was 2 episodes ago, maybe last episode, you guys were talking about taxes a little bit. And more specifically, last year through the CARES Act, with people getting their checks that were laid off. Like I was one of those people. But you had said something that I think a lot of people aren't aware of. And that's not getting and it could be, I would imagine it's not just specific to California because every state kind of does it a different way, but it's all kind of when someone says, I want you to take taxes out so I don't have to worry about at the end of the year. What I heard is that in some places, specific, maybe even to California, they're not taking nearly as many taxes out. So in the end, people end up owing money back, right?
Yes. So here's what's going on. And then there's actually pending legislation with the current stimulus that affects this. So when you collect unemployment, so California, I'll use an example, but many states were this way. They take a certain percentage automatically. In California, it's 10%. And John, you can chime in too, because we've talked, you had unemployment last year if there's something I'm missing. That's the way the system was programmed here in California and other states as well. So the thing is, if we all remember, there was the enhancement that came in as well. During the spring of 2020, they did the extra $600 a week. Mm-hmm. What happened was these unemployment agencies, their systems, when they were taking out withholding for income tax, were only taking it off the amount that was your state benefit. So in California, the maximum state benefit for unemployment is $450 a week. So they were taking $45 out. The problem was with the enhancement, people were actually taking home $1,050 a week. Damn. But they were only having $45 withheld. So what, of course, happens, right? You're billing all this unemployment, right? You're getting all of it. You're actually only paying about 4% worth in terms of withholding. $45 out of $1,050 is like 4.5% basically.
I feel like the standard is like 20%ish just starting out, like 19 plus a few miscellaneous things ends up being like 20-some%.
So you're only paying 4. So guess what happens? Now everybody's doing their taxes this year and they're going, wait a minute, why do I owe? I always get a refund or I always pay what, quote, I'm supposed to pay or what the system tells me to pay. And they're getting caught up with bills. Now, one thing with the stimulus right now that's going on, we're still waiting, in terms of, the president has to sign it and all that. They're talking about for 2020 doing a waiver for the first $10,200 of unemployment. That people that, that will become tax free. We're watching that, we're trying to see where the legislation goes. One thing that I know the tax community, the tax practitioner community is wondering is, are we going to, for anybody who's already filed, are they going to have to go and do amendments for all of those people that already filed that claimed all their unemployment on their taxes? We're still watching to see that. It's a big mess right now. But yes, people definitely were caught up with unemployment and not paying enough because of that enhancement that they gave last year.
So we still haven't filed yet. In fact, my wife is on me to get her the information, but I'm kind of feeling like maybe we should hold off.
You know, Jay, that's what now some experts in the field are recommending, that people, because the legislation is pending and, I think the House, actually on the day we're recording this, the House was supposed to vote. I don't know the results yet. And it's supposed to go to the president soon. Some experts are telling people, if you've got unemployment, you haven't filed yet, we're still waiting for this exemption amount to see if it comes through or not. Wait until you know for sure, because we don't have direction yet on those who already filed what we're supposed to do to have them claim. Are we going to have to file amendments or not? Right. And that's a pain. An amendment is a pain. You have to go and get it, refile, and it can take months. So it's definitely, if you haven't yet filed, let's see where this legislation goes. And, if it's finalized, then I would say file after we have more information on that exemption amount.
So in Arizona, I think all we got was like $200 and something. I want to say $240 a week.
Okay.
Here. So then, of course, with that extra $600, it brought it to $8 something. But then I was still getting like $500 every week, $540. So it sounds like maybe somebody somewhere was doing it right on this end, at least.
It's possible, Jay. Different states.
Man, I was banking money in California.
See, you were.
I was getting the maximum $450 plus a $600. So,
and then it caught up.
Over $2,000 I was getting every 2 weeks.
Still eating ramen noodles.
Eating ramen noodals.
It caught up, though. John is one of those. And we've talked about that. It caught up in terms of that withholding issue. And we were talking on the show. There's a form that people are supposed to fill out for unemployment if you're not withholding enough. It's the form W4V, voluntary withholding. But that information wasn't out there for people to be aware of at the time, that, hey, the state's only going to take this much from you. At least in California, you're only going to get 10% off the state benefit. If you want to withhold more, you have to voluntarily submit this form. That information wasn't out there. I mean, EDD was a mess. They barely got the money out to people, let alone explain what to do.
8 weeks? No.
Took you
8 weeks.
Yeah, 2 months, payment. Right? Yeah. So forget even them explaining to you, this is how you make sure you're withholding enough. By the way, make sure you do this or else you're going to be in trouble next year. There was no information about that. People didn't know. That was the problem that they had with that whole situation.
Right.
We're talking to Marcus and John of the Real Talk with Jam podcast. I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, we want to remind people who we are. This is, we sound like just two random buffoons, but hey, we do got a great podcast. Check us out. Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, Jay. I think for your episode, I think we said your podcast name like 5 million times just to make sure. Because I know that's one thing, John, we're very good about that. Whenever we have a guest, we really reinforce who they are, any social media, any way to follow them. So we definitely, that's good. That's great. That's something we make sure we like to do as well in our show.
John,
absolutely.
Do you think that's Marcus's way of really telling me that I need to mention it more often?
I think he's trying to, in a communication sense, he's going around in circles. He's not getting to the point. Straight line, Marcus. Straight line.
John, I've been told that I'm too direct sometimes, so I'm trying to behave and be nice and polite. But okay, fine.
So on your last show, people were writing in telling you guys bicker too much. I actually really enjoy it.
That's good. See, that's great. That's good feedback. Yeah, someone actually told us that they think that we were actually going to fight. And like, no,
absolutely not.
Marcus and I, no. I mean, we're best friends. Besides podcast hosts, we're best friends. We will never. We get into it, but I don't think we'll fight.
I think it's healthy, John. I think best friends, a good relationship. You just get it all out there. You pick on each other. You let that tension out because that's you guys. We understand each other and we understand that's what we're doing. Hey, you get that energy out. You call each other names and then you can move forward. I think it's healthy. I actually do. Even though sometimes it gets a little rough between the two of us with the name calling and all that. I think it's good. I think it's a good thing.
You don't start a fight with you.
Right. Those aren't fighting words. That's when Marcus tends to just be stuck. He doesn't know what to say or what to do.
Or I'm trying to stop because we're going to take it too far. So I'm trying to bring us back down to earth because we're really going to get fired up and it's going to get ugly. So,
so John, you mentioned communication and it makes me wonder because you're going to school as a communication major.
Yes.
Now, so you guys are best friends, but are you kind of psychoanalyzing and somewhat puppet mastering, controlling Marcus, and he's not quite sure?
You know, sorry, he kind of just blew your audio there.
If only he was, but go ahead, John.
John, yes, John.
That's
go
a
ahead and
good
answer
one,
this.
Jay.
I have him very, very detail oriented. we got a few stuff down here to keep him in track. So,
Oh, really? It's not working well, but go ahead,
you
John.
know, Marcus, when me and Marcus first met, though, Jay, it was something that I didn't think would ever happen because we had such different communication techniques, I guess. I'm a very outspoken person. I love to make eye contact. I love to be right in front of you. I use a lot of hand movements. Marcus is not that kind of guy. He looks away. He wants to avoid eye contact.
Damn.
Doesn't want to be in front of you too long. So it was hard because I'm expecting him to react a certain way. And at one point, Marcus was a boss of mine at a place of employment. So I'm like, all right, this dude is my boss. Like, I have to talk with him. Why is he avoiding me?
Hold on. If you're not playing video games, what other kind of boss is there?
John. So John was the first employee I ever hired. Actually, that's really what it comes down to. Yes, I was his boss at work originally. That's how we met. That's how we first got to know each other. I was his boss.
What an interesting dynamic. Right?
Yes, and then I left the company, and John left after too, and then we were able to become friends. Here we are today,
Podcast a year later,
podcasting and everything.
Well, that's awesome, John. So communication style. You just described Marcus's communication style, and on your most recent podcast, or one of your recent podcasts, you were talking about this little exercise you guys have to do. So you guys have heard my podcast a few times, and sometimes the person in front of the mic isn't the person in front of you out and about.
Oh,
so if you were to take a wild guess of my communication style out and about, what would you guess it to be?
I honestly feel like you are the way you are. I feel like this is the person I will interact if I was to see you in person. I think your volume might change, but I think this is who you are. I would expect you to sound the same. I really feel that genuine conversation from you. I listen to your show. Yeah, I can see, where you might change the volume. You might, change the tone of your voice. But I feel like overall, your sense of communicating with others is very similar to your show. I get that feeling.
You know what's funny is I'm actually quiet as fuck.
Okay.
So one thing that people always tell me, like if I make friends at work and you start IMing back and forth and you just IM all day. And it's like, hey, let's go get a coffee together. All right, let's go to Starbucks. I probably don't say anything. And then when I'm like at car shows, like I'm just kind of that quiet person. So it's just, that's why I asked, because it's like the person I am behind the mic sometimes can be completely different of how I am in person.
Behind the mic, that gives a lot of comfort, and people do change behind the mic. Like, you wouldn't be surprised, but the way I talk behind the mic is really the way I talk in person. And but with the mic, Marcus, for example, he didn't want to do the podcast, right? He was, at the beginning, if you listen to our show from the beginning, we've changed. In the beginning, it was just kind of like scripted. Marcus was very mellow. He wasn't too comfortable. But then I told him, I'm like, hey, like, no one's watching you. We're communicating with each other as we would being in front of a table, with two beers, whatever the case is, right? Just ignore the microphone, have a conversation. And, that's what helped him. And now sometimes we forget we're actually recording our podcast and we have to drag ourselves back to the mic.
Absolutely, John.
I'm like, Marcus, get back to the mic. We need to capture this audio. We can't go into the other room.
John, sometimes we'll be talking in preparation of the recording and we're already having the conversation. And I'll tell John too, it's like, John, hold on, wait. Don't talk about this topic anymore. We might be getting ready, or, going out somewhere and we're talking about what we're going to talk about on the show and we're already having it. It's like, no. Don't talk about this issue anymore because we got to save all our energy and all our passion for the recording. And it's hard because we want to talk. We want to go at it right then and there. We need the microphones right there wherever we're at. I mean, that's what happens sometimes.
No, I get it because you're engaged in the conversation already. So it's like, okay, do we want to hit the reset and start it over? And then it's like we're saying the same thing, but it's no longer off the tongue, like spur of the moment. So I totally get that. I was just talking to someone the other day. I'm trying to think about that. They're going to be a future guest, and I was like, just save it. Save it for the podcast. Just save it for the podcast. This is good stuff. Just shut up. I don't want to.
You want to capture that
authenticity. You want that authentic
right.
response to the topic versus if you redo it later on. So that's one of the things, Jay, too, with us and our show, how it's very like yours. It's very live. Just it happens as it happens. But you do have podcasts that are very very rigid. They record many different times the same thing to get it exactly right. Whereas we just let it happen as it happens. So the engagement we have, John and I, it's authentic, it's real, it's in the moment. I mean, we've laughed. I've had coughing fits. I mean, John has laughed and fallen apart. It's right there in the moment. It's happening. It's really who we truly are.
Everyone has their own style, I mean, you wouldn't talk to CEO of Microsoft the way you would talk to, your daughter, son, wife, spouse. It's very broad.
I would.
It's very, very broad spectrum. You would.
I'd be like,
yeah.
Mira.
Mira. Yeah.
Mira. Cerveza. So, John, you said earlier when you were talking to Marcus, it's like, hey, be cool, man. Just act like we're just sitting here having a beer. So, with that being said, what do you guys drink? Like, do you actually drink beer, or was that just an example?
One thing I really enjoy, and people always give the thumbs down to it, but I've really found a love for them. We've talked about, both John and I have talked about how we're really trying to get healthier and watching what we eat and exercising more. I've been drinking a lot of White Claws lately, and some people
seltzer guy.
Really, some people get really down on it. It's not real booze. It's not real, blah, blah, blah. You know what? Because of the calories and all that, and especially me trying to be healthier, I've really been drinking a lot of those, and that's been my thing lately. And people want to give the thumbs down to it. That's their choice. That's been my drink of choice lately.
I'm more of an ale guy. I love. I mean, one of my favorites, which is I guess it could be basic, but I love everything that comes from the motherland where I come from, Mexico. So I love Modelo. I love Dos Equis. I used to be a fan of Corona, but not really much anymore. It's not a beer of choice for me. I went to Alaska once, Anchorage, then went to Fairbanks, and a lot of the beer brewed there in the state. I mean, these ales and everything they had is just, it was so crisp and tasty and weedy. So Marcus doesn't like the weedy flavor in the beer, but I like that. I like that plant taste. I like that wheat flavor. When I was young, first started drinking, Blue Moon was my beer of choice.
So you like the Belgians?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's and for Marcus, seltzers are good. I mean, I enjoy seltzers, but they make fun of you a lot for that. It's a SoCal thing,
especially right now. Though, like I said again, especially for the health kind of thing, because booze, of course, has a lot of carbs. I'm trying to watch the carbs,
Well, that's why everyone gives you so much shit. So, a couple things. Number one, Corona. My wife loves Corona. The family loves Corona. Corona's bullshit. Corona has a good PR agent. That's about it. Yeah. It's not really a good beer. Now, White Claw, I'm going to call the bullshit flag on White Claw with a lot of people. Just like, first, have you seen the Scooby-Doo meme where they pull off the...
I don't think so. John, have you?
Oh, they pull off his
They pull off
hood.
the White Claw hood and his Zima underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. But I'm going to call the bullshit flag on that, because if you're... And the reason why people mess with you is because you'd say it's about the carbs and all that kind of stuff, right? But if you're out at the ocean, if you're just having a good day hanging out, there's few things that are better than having like a seltzer or even like a Dos Equis or just like a normal everyday beer.
Agreed.
I mean, if the person who brings a 4-pack of IPA, it's like, dude, what are you doing? Go ahead and bring a couple 12s of seltzers, whether they're White Claws or Trulies, and everyone throws them down. Everyone has a headache later on, but you're still good.
Agreed. Absolutely, Jay.
Yeah,
I love your thinking there.
I mean, you know what? You're right, because that's like a SoCal thing. We're close to the beach.
I find them refreshing, especially if it's been a full day and you're just sitting back. It's like drinking a soda, kind of, because people drink soda, of course, to feel refreshed, but then you got that buzz, and it's not gonna just throw me off my diet either. So it just works. I'm just happy with it.
I love beer, and I think for me, it's more what comes with drinking beer. Socializing with friends,
party,
that experience. Yeah, I love that. Like my father, take him out to dinner. and I know exactly what beer he wants, order it for him. He's fine. That's all he needs. A Newcastle brown ale.
I went through a Newcastle phase.
Yeah, and that makes him happy. Whatever food is in front of him, he gets one of those. He
doesn't care
what
what
he
it
talks
is.
about is, oh, look how crisp and look at the color. Look at this.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what I enjoy about it. I enjoy that.
You're right. Well, it's like, I don't know. Do either of you have yards or are you both apartment people?
Both apartment people.
But my dad's house, huge yard.
Yeah. Well, you come in from doing yard work and you want to grab something that you can chug. And it's refreshing. And that's why all those beers that I mentioned earlier, I actually do a lot of like waters too, whether it's LaCroix or whatever. Or
John loves
LaCroix.
those.
Any number of those, right? We have a beer fridge downstairs, and half the time it's packed with waters and just beers that I can chug, and I just reach in there and I drink whatever I pull out, whether it's a beer or it's a water.
Hey, it's not bad, especially there. Because I mean, you know, when you're doing yard work out there in Arizona, it's not just doing yard work. You're out there, I mean, in an oven basically. And I mean, I've been out there in summer. And I know how hot it gets out there in the area. And you do want that fridge fully stocked if you're doing anything outside. That is for sure.
Michelada in the summer.
Something.
Ooh.
Yeah, I got a couple camels in the backyard too.
That's how he records the show sometimes.
That's right. On the camel.
One of them start riding around.
Okay, you're gonna get a Jay, just for that. Okay,
I appreciate
just for
it.
that.
I appreciate it. Yeah. John and Marcus, man, I want to thank you guys for coming on the show. I appreciate you entertaining me for the last 30 minutes or so.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. We're so glad. Thank you for having us on. We've been waiting for this day and it came, and we're so happy to be part of the show.
Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you, Jay.
Take care. Thanks.
I want to thank John and Marcus again. Real Talk with Jam podcast. Check them out. Those guys have a lot of fun. It is a well-produced podcast, and they do all the stuff themselves as well, just like I do. And I think you'll enjoy it. It's just a fun podcast to have on, and they tackle real subjects in a really fun manner. And you can generally tell the love those guys have for each other. They are the dearest of friends, and they're just a lot of fun to listen to. So this is the point of the podcast. Coming up, if you don't want any spoiler alerts, I'm going to warn you, you can listen to the beginning of it, but as soon as I said, let's talk about WandaVision, and he asks me how I felt about the show overall, at that point, you're going to want to just skip straight to the Q&A section, or you can just listen to it and plug your ears or fast forward when you get to a certain part. Tim from Marvel Watchers, welcome to the show.
Man, thanks for having me. We've been kind of bantering back and forth on Facebook for a while, so it's great to finally get a few minutes to catch up and talk Marvel and talk some other fun stuff that we've been going through.
The Marvel Watchers podcast with you, Corbin, and Clayton is one of the two podcasts I listen to because you guys bring a certain quality and entertainment. And if I find myself arguing with the podcast, that's actually one of my checkpoints for podcasters worth listening to, and healthy arguing, not like, you're such a freaking idiot. And that's why I wanted to get you on here so we could talk about WandaVision that just wrapped up. We have Falcon and the Winter Soldier coming right up. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about Marvel Watchers, the Mandalorian podcast you guys have, and Nerdosphere and whatever else you have going on.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate it. What I really love about recording Marvel Watchers, Clayton and Corbin are brothers, and there's always playful brother banter back and forth there, but they've got very different opinions than me. And that's why they say they've brought me on, because they're very strong in their opinions, and I love to hate their opinions so much. So it's a fun podcast for us to do. And we come from very different perspectives. So Clayton and Corbin grew up with Marvel. Like, they were in the comics before the MCU was actually a thing. And I'm the exact opposite. Like, I was into sports and action movies, and then I go and see Iron Man and I'm in love. So, my nerddom is through the MCU. They've got decades of experience on me, so I'm sure they want to wring my neck when I'm just bringing MCU's perspective. But, I love listening to them because they're able to kind of shine a light on what's happening behind the scenes that an average MCU fan who doesn't have decades of reading comics they probably not going to know a lot of these things. So I enjoy the stuff that they bring. But again, man, I just love to hate their opinions.
You know, I didn't know that they were brothers until you just said that. And it makes a lot of sense because in your last episode, wrapping up WandaVision, when you and Corbin were going at it, like you guys had a nice, healthy, spirited debate. And I was on your side. I was also yelling at Corbin. And when Clayton interjected, he kind of went right down the middle. You know, I was like, what? Pick a side, man. But I get it.
That's his motif. He's Switzerland. He says he likes to try and, level everything out. But I think that's a lot of the fun of doing these podcasts is picking a side, being passionate about it, and duking it out. And we do that some in Marvel Watchers. And we have got a couple other podcasts that you kind of teased as well. We started with the Nerdosphere years ago, and Marvel Watchers is our baby right now. We did the More Mando show as The Mandalorian was kicking off. And that was a lot of fun.
And that's where I actually caught on with you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Corbin has another podcast called Anime Ultra, where he and two other guys sit down every single week and talk about anime. So we've got something for all types of nerds over at the Nerdosphere right now.
That's awesome. Before we get on to WandaVision, I guess there's a lot of things more annoying, but for the sake of this conversation, I don't think there's anything more annoying than the person who says the book is better.
Mm-hmm.
They make movies for people like me. I'll sit down and listen to an audiobook all day. I hate reading. My mind cannot concentrate on the words, no matter how good they are. I will still end up bailing on the book. Let me enjoy my movie. Let me enjoy my TV show.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm a big reader. I do about 40 or 50 books a year. It's one of my passions as well. I've definitely found myself on the side of saying, oh, the book was better. But you have to put an asterisk next to it because I think with the style of movie and the style of entertainment that's out right now, I think more times than not, the show or the movie actually is better because it's just everything that's popular is so visual. And it's really, really hard to build that in a book and have my mind make it as awesome as what I can see on the screen. I can't imagine Infinity War the same way that I can watch it on Disney Plus. You know what I mean? Like my imagination is going to fall miles and miles short of what they're able to do today. So, reading's kind of a lost art. I still love to read, but there is nothing wrong with preferring a TV show or a movie. And there's stuff that I intentionally skip the book. I'm like, oh, you know what? This show looks awesome or this movie looks dope. I'm just going to watch the movie because why mess with it?
Let's talk about WandaVision.
So real quick, if you had to say the overarching feeling you have for WandaVision, was it worth the hype or did you walk away feeling a little disappointed?
I walked away feeling a little disappointed.
Okay.
Where are you on that?
Man, I'm going to pick a side because the real answer is I'm Switzerland. I'm Clayton in this topic.
Okay.
Like I can argue both sides pretty well, but I'm going to pick a side. I was ultimately satisfied. It was worth the hype. And the reason I say that is because I have so much trust in the brand right now that I can take a step back and say, you know what? This right here in a silo, I'm not satisfied. But I'm going to walk away satisfied because I know that they are going to grow off of this and I'm going to get a couple of movies or a couple of shows down the road. And I'm going to look back and say, man, WandaVision was awesome because it set the stage for all of these things. If you look at it as a building block, I think you can walk away from it feeling very satisfied.
Yeah, I'll agree with that 100%. So they've built a lot of trust equity. And watching the first episode and the second episode, I absolutely hated the first couple episodes, but I still watched it every week because I knew what was coming in some sense. I knew it was some sort of an alternate reality. And when it was said and done, I was okay with the way it ended. But I think the first several episodes, I was disappointed only because I just went on vacation. My wife and I went on vacation with some friends, and they're not really into the MCU, which I think is just crazy. And they watch movies, and they've dabbled in a couple movies, and they're like, hey, WandaVision's coming out. Should we watch it? I said, absolutely not. I said, if you don't know the rest of it, stay the hell away because you won't understand it.
You got to start with Iron Man. You got to go back to the beginning if you're going to dive into WandaVision, which I get it. I mean, Game of Thrones, I bring up all the time. Game of Thrones, incredible TV show. Even if you look at the last season and say it was terrible. Incredible TV show. I didn't watch it until we got to like the second to last season. And it's one of those things where you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm 7 seasons behind, or I'm 22 movies behind. And it feels like this insurmountable mountain. But if you are listening to this and haven't checked out the MCU, you got to start with Iron Man and just plow through the first few movies. And I promise you are going to find something you like. There's comedy as it develops. The effects are, you won't find better visual effects out there. And the storytelling it's A+ in the grand scheme of things, especially as the movies mature and as you move into phase 2 and phase 3 of the MCU. But I agree. I think WandaVision was a slow start. To me, it felt very obvious that WandaVision was intended to be a binged show. Like, I think the original formula was, we're going to release every episode at once, and you're going to burn through the first 2 or 3 episodes because they're only 20 minutes long, and you're going to be hooked by the time you get to episode 4, which is where the plot and the action really just starts to pick up and mature. And they changed their course on that because of The Mandalorian, which ultimately I like that moving forward. I like a weekly show. I don't know. There's just something special about being able to look forward to your Friday night and saying, man, it's WandaVision night, or it's Falcon and the Winter Soldier night. And it creates this cultural phenomenon where people are excited and they're talking about your product for a full week. So I like that they ended up making that decision
100%.
and that they're making that decision moving forward. But to me, WandaVision very much so felt like a show that was intended to be watched in a couple of sittings.
Yeah, if nothing else. And I know that Kevin Feige wanted a certain amount of episodes, but I think maybe the first episode, had it been an hour, because I think it was at the end of the second episode where you're like, oh, someone's watching them.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. And then that just told me, it's like, okay, don't give up on this show.
Yeah. And I'm glad most people didn't give up on it. I saw that it was the most streamed show. Especially as it got towards the second half of the show, the numbers were through the roof. And that's speaking to the equity that you talked of, that Feige and Disney and Marvel have built up, that people were willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and go along for the ride on a creative project, which is what WandaVision was. It was a creative project. A lot of people don't know this, but WandaVision wasn't intended to be the first show on Disney Plus. It was supposed to come out after Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which makes a ton of sense. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it looks like a rock'em sock'em, plot-driven, typical Marvel movie, which anybody can really dive into and get invested in. WandaVision is the creative risk, and because of COVID and scheduling, they ended up flip-flopping, and I'm glad people went along for the ride. It does seem like the general consensus is it's about 50-50. I mean, we've done a couple of polls and it's almost 50-50 on, were you happy with how WandaVision wrapped up, or did you walk away feeling like they missed the mark?
And you guys talked about it. It was supposed to be the second show. So it makes me wonder, there seems to be a lot of politics at play on all the previews that we've seen on Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm wondering if that's where we get the origin of S.W.O.R.D.
It wouldn't surprise me if that's not where we get a formal introduction to S.W.O.R.D.
Yeah, because WandaVision was like, these people exist. And they obviously, they were just there. And then you got people walking around with FBI jackets. So they're obviously local to the United States. And maybe something fallout from the Sokovian Accords. But I bet you that's it. So one of the things you guys were talking about is kind of up in the air, specific to the Skrulls versus the Kree. And the discussion was, in the comics, they are bad people. They are just a bad race. You can't trust them. And it makes sense. Like V, the final. Remember the show V back in the day where they come down here and they're like lizard people and they look like us, but they're really not.
Yep.
That's kind of what that reminded me of. But it's not the first time the MCU has taken a story from the comics and twisted it however they want to do it. Whether it's Thanos or, so like in the comics, apparently Nebula is the one who grabs it and saves everybody. So there's a lot of things that had changed from the paper onto the big screen. And so it doesn't really, we don't really know a lot about them yet in the MCU. So I think we're going to see a lot of them in the next phase. And between the two races, someone's always the bad guy and someone always feels like they're the good guy. And maybe in that conflict, the humans or the humanoids, if you will, people who look like us from other planets, were kind of the third party there. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's going to be interesting where they take it. And I can see people being upset about this, but I keep putting an asterisk next to it because I'm not going to be surprised if we don't see a change with the Kree or the Skrull or whichever group you want to focus on as they move further down the line. We know that there's going to be a Secret Wars television show coming out. And that's really where you see the dirty side of them come out, where they're, pretending to be superheroes and sabotaging people's lives and their image just to wreak chaos. So I'm not going to be surprised if we don't see that the Skrull that we've got right now that look like good guys are maybe the minority of the Skrull. And, maybe there's an overwhelming majority that's going to come in and be much darker and more ill-intended.
I want to talk about Monica Rambeau.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who really, really enjoyed the character. I wasn't really that big of a fan, and I don't know if it was her, the actress, or she almost, in WandaVision, she almost annoyed me as much as Carol Danvers annoys a lot of other people, which I really don't have a problem with Captain Marvel. I mean, she's not my favorite, but I don't really have a problem with her being part of the rest of the group. But I just didn't. I understand they're ushering her into the next phase. Hopefully, this would be a colossal waste if they didn't. But I just didn't really latch onto her that much.
Yeah, she's definitely going to be a big part of the next phase because she's definitely going to be in the next Captain Marvel movie. And I imagine she's going to be Photon. For a lot of people who don't know or haven't followed the comics, Monica Rambeau was the original female Captain Marvel. And then over time, she's changed her name. She's been 2 or 3 different superheroes. The one she's probably most famously known for was Photon. I don't disagree with you, but I'm also wondering how much of it's just the way that they wrote the character in the short narrative they had. There's little things that don't make sense about her that we got from WandaVision. First, they kind of missed the mark for me when she comes out of the blip, right? So she was a victim of the snap. She comes back through the blip and she finds out that her mother's been dead for a couple of years. There wasn't the emotional reaction that you would really expect. You have the scene where she's freaking out in the hospital, but then it's like she's fully recovered, which never made sense to me.
That's a good
point.
If
I just found out that I've been gone for 5 years and everything's different around me, I wouldn't be saying, okay, I need to get back to work right away. I would be taking some time to reevaluate some things, just me. And then another thing that I think rubbed a lot of people wrong, it rubbed me wrong, was she initially set the stage for Hayward, who's the director of S.W.O.R.D., who ends up being a bad guy in WandaVision.
He was a royal asshole.
She set the stage for him to be a good guy.
Yep.
Like when she's coming back, she says, oh, Hayward's been promoted. He makes perfect sense. He's the logical pick. He's a good guy. So like you go into the show assuming that, okay, Hayward's fine because you assume that Monica's going to be fine. So I think some of those things maybe detracted from my view of her as a character. I'm hopeful that you get to Captain Marvel or wherever she makes her next appearance, that they actually do her some justice and write a solid story around her and give her an opportunity to actually act. I don't know. It just felt like she was handcuffed throughout this show.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point because I didn't even pick up on the fact that she just because people cope in different ways. So I can understand I got to get back to work, but can we show her going to visit her mom's grave or something?
I mean, more than like a 30-second clip of her freaking out in a hospital as she's trying to figure out what's happened. Like she just accepts it and moves on. And I get it. They're trying to get, an entire show done in under 6 hours. You can't spend a ton of time to that. But the flip side is they spent a ton of time doing the artsy thing that doesn't add to the story long term. I would have rather them take a few minutes off of the artsy part of, hey, this week's going to be Malcolm in the Middle, or next week's going to be, you name the sitcom that they mimicked. I would have rather them taken a little bit more time to develop Monica Rambeau.
Speaking about the blip, you brought the blip up, and I had some notes from your guys' last episode in regards to the question about, S.W.O.R.D. getting a hold of Vision.
Yeah.
Once the imagined Vision, once he transfers the memories, not necessarily the emotion, but the memories over, shouldn't he be wondering, even because even her version of a vision, which couldn't exist outside the, what are we calling that thing?
The hex.
The hex. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He knew who he was, because I think one of the discussions was he had no idea who he was, but he knew who he was up until a certain point. What?
Oh, we're talking about White Vision here, right?
Well, originally we were talking about her version of Vision, not even White Vision, because White Vision didn't really know. And wouldn't he be wondering what happened to everybody in theory?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really weird dynamic because, and I don't think they did a great job of explaining what Vision knew and what he didn't know. And it was a product of them trying to keep it a mystery on, is he actually back to life, or is this some figment of her imagination, or what's going on with Vision? But it was a really weird dynamic because he has no true memory before the blip, but he also knows that he like is in love with Wanda. And they kind of explain in the finale, it's because, you know, Wanda's created him out of her hope, her fear, her love, out of her attachment to the Mind Stone. All these things are what culminated to remake Vision. He was aware, but he was missing so many pieces to the puzzle. And it's weird that he wasn't able to put some of those pieces together as especially he was going around and Vision. Actually starting to question things.
Yeah, especially because it's Vision.
Yes.
And I think it was a conversation he was having with Darcy, though. He had actually mentioned, I believe he had, I have to go back and look, but I thought he had actually mentioned Sokovia and a few of the other things, which meant he had some sort of memory from Age of Ultron, which I thought I was like, oh, so he does. Because up until that point, I thought maybe he just didn't know anything. But then when he transferred his memories over to White Vision, that would be the first thought. Well, because he was gone. He was gone before the blip, technically, right? About seconds before the blip, but he was gone before the blip.
Yeah, he was the first major person to fall, and then the blip happened, and we saw a bunch of superheroes fall.
I mean, he hasn't seen Stark till he turned off he turned off his transponder, which happened 2 weeks before the events of Infinity War. It's got to be wondering where Tony is.
Yeah, I mean, so they didn't do a great job of explaining Vision. I agree with you there. The only assumption I could make is that he was essentially imprinted with some of Wanda's most fond memories. And, you kind of see that as Agatha's walking her through like her mind. And you see the Vision, you see the scenes where Vision and Wanda are first starting to bond, and it's happening during Age of Ultron. My guess is that those are the ones that she didn't repress, and she's repressed the rest of them. And that's why Vision doesn't fully know, like, am I dead? What's going on?
Right.
You know, Agatha's the one that kind of like shines that light on him initially when she says, you're dead. They did not do a good job of doing that. But I do think the Wakanda debate is so interesting because there's a lot of people online that are like, how the heck did S.W.O.R.D. even get Vision out of Wakanda? Because Wakanda is in this protective bubble. And, I think you and I maybe talked about it, and there's a couple of things you can point to. And there's the Sokovian Accords, which essentially made Vision government property. That's what he signed. That's what he wanted.
Get a tracker on him.
But then you also have to, there's a tracker, but you also have to add a real human element to it. Half of Wakanda just disappeared, including T'Challa, the king.
Yep.
Like, you can't imagine a government that's a world that's that fractured, and you have a government entity comes in and starts flashing the paperwork around and says, hey, we've got to take him right now. Like, I don't think there's somebody there that's going to say, no, you can't take this guy who, by the way, we don't even really know who he is.
Right. He's not one of us. Take him. Get him out of here.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like they're coming in and trying to take T'Challa's body. They're taking Vision. They're like, yeah, whatever. Just take him, be gone. So
the way the show ended, and we could talk about this, sorry, spoiler alert. I think I'll throw the spoiler alert at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, we've already spoiled a few things.
We've talked about a lot of good stuff, but I kind of, I don't know. I was watching and I was like, oh, maybe when Wanda flies off here, which by the way, I knew that her kids, like once you realize that she made the hex, you knew that, I knew that Vision wasn't real. I just wasn't quite sure how.
Yeah.
And I knew the kids weren't real because first off, she's not going to have kids with Vision anyway. Let's get real. Let's get real in the alternate reality of things. There's no way. But I kind of expected the White Vision to just kind of show up and just kind of fly off with her or something and just leave it like that, where you're like, oh, what's happening next? I mean, did you even think about that, or what were you thinking once he just flew off?
I mean, I kind of went into it thinking that he is a blank slate, right? So he hasn't been impacted by the Mind Stone as directly as what Vision was. He really has no connection to Wanda at this point, outside of he was powered by the Hex, essentially. I think he is this neutral player as we move into the future that could be influenced either way. And we saw that very easily with Vision, right? Like
when he first popped out, remember that?
Yeah. What's that?
When he first popped out in Age of Ultron, he was kind of freaking out and throwing people around, and they're like, just relax.
Totally. And that's what you see with White Vision. He's born, quote unquote, born.
Mm-hmm.
Hayward says, hey, this is your goal, your mission. And he says, okay. And he just goes and does it. Like he's not questioning. He wasn't questioning things yet. And then he has this enlightened moment with Vision where he says, you have access to all of this information. They've just suppressed the data. And they have the moment where he's transferring all the data to him. And that was the moment where he woke up essentially and stopped fighting Vision and flew off on his own. So I don't know what to expect from White Vision. My gut says we don't see him for a little while. Like just knowing Marvel, that feels like the type of thing that they, hey, we showed you White Vision. We're going to make you forget about him. We're going to have a couple of movies and a TV show. And then bam, he's going to come in at the end of a movie or the end of a show. And it's going to change the dynamic moving forward because White Vision has the potential to be one of the most powerful superheroes out there. He's incredibly powerful. It's possible that he has connections with Ultron. There's a lot of people who are saying, hey, he can get connected just like Ultron. So it's going to be very interesting to see which way that character ends up sliding as we move into the future. And I think you could say the same about Wanda too.
Mm-hmm.
For people who haven't read the comics, Wanda is a dark hero. Like she's done some terrible things. She was called the Scarlet Witch in the comics because she burnt down a village of innocents, right? And they were running away on fire, calling her a Scarlet Witch. It's different than how she got the name inside the MCU. But her most famous moment, arguably, is when she whispers, "No more mutants," and 98% of mutants disappear. Good, bad, indifferent, didn't matter. So she is the most powerful being in the MCU. Kevin Feige said that. We've seen that in the comics, and it's completely untamed. And we also know that she has a hard time controlling her emotions. So my prediction is over the next phase or two, we're going to slowly start seeing Wanda maybe drift into a darker territory, which to me is going to be awesome if they actually pull that off. I know Clayton and Corbin, we debated this to the death, and they said, we're not going to get the no more mutants scene. I think we will because it's so iconic to the character. I think it would be a crime not to get her there at some point.
Almost like Captain finally saying Avengers Assemble.
Exactly. Like it's a huge missed opportunity if you don't have those defining moments that are built in for you.
So you think she could potentially, because that was also debated on the other podcast, the Top Back podcast, would she actually become an anti-hero or actually become a villain? I don't think she'd become a villain, but I can understand how she might feel ashamed and angry and just kind of run off and not want to be around anybody. And maybe just, like you said, she has a hard time controlling her temper. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like Thanos. Like, granted, Thanos is a villain. Like, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But he's a villain that a lot of people can empathize with because they can sit there and see his point of view and say, you know what? It's a moral dilemma, but he's not necessarily wrong on a lot of his things. He's a sociopath in the way that he does it. Like, I don't want anybody to take that away that we feel that way.
Yeah.
But like his end vision made sense from a strictly logical standpoint. And I think you could see something similar with Wanda, where she's sitting there and she's a little bit of an emotional mess, but she's also seeing, are mutants actually a good thing to the world? Like, because there's all these people with unchecked power and, you're sitting there debating, like, who's right? It's the Cap versus Iron Man debate, right? It's a complete morality debate where you can argue both sides. And I think that's what we're going to get with Wanda personally.
So if people were really paying attention, I had to remind my wife about this. I go, Wanda's one of the most powerful people, if not the most powerful person. She goes, really? I go, yeah, she was seconds away from killing Thanos.
Yes.
Like she broke his weapon. She like snapped that thing. If he didn't turn around and say, make it rain or rain thunder or whatever the hell he said, he was seconds away from being dead.
Absolutely. She was about to kill him. And a lot of people debate those scenes, right? Because I think a lot of people feel that Captain Marvel's the strongest Avenger out there. And they'll point to the fight with Captain Marvel and Thanos where Captain Marvel kind of holds her ground for a little bit and then Thanos ultimately bests her. And they'll say, yeah, but that scene means more because Thanos had stones. He had some of the Infinity Stones when he fought Captain Marvel. When he fights Wanda in that scene that you're mentioning, he has no Infinity Stones. So it's truly just Thanos and his own power versus Wanda. And he has to yell rain fire and kill a ton of his troops to prevent from Wanda killing him. But the other scene that people forget about when they're trying to debate who's stronger, it's the scene where Vision is ultimately killed. She's sitting there. She knows that she needs to destroy the Mind Stone. Vision's begging her to do it. She's breaking the stone with her
and
power.
Holding off.
And with the other hand, while she's crying and emotionally devastated because she's killing what she sees as the love of her life. She has nothing in her life but Vision. She's killing him and then absentmindedly holding Thanos back, and he's got all but one stone at this point.
Yeah.
So people who point to that, and they've completely forgot about that scene, and it's a total flex for Wanda to be able to destroy an Infinity Stone and hold off Thanos with 5 stones, each with one hand, while emotionally destroyed. I mean, that's how powerful she is, and why I think she is going to be the linchpin, along with Doctor Strange, as we move into the future for Marvel.
Tim, it's been great, man. I really appreciate you coming on the Hard Parking Podcast. Next time I'm going to get you, Clayton, and Corbin on. We'll talk about Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you giving me a chance to catch up with you. If you guys want to listen to more of us, check out Marvel Watchers or Anime Ultra on any streaming platform.
So that was Tim of the Marvel Watchers podcast. Hopefully I didn't ruin too much, but that was good. So his podcast, he has one of the only podcasts that I've listened to that follow the sequence of a show. Normally I don't like that kind of stuff, but their Mandalorian show that they do, and I don't listen to every episode, but the Mandalorian show they do and the Marvel Watchers after WandaVision, I just really enjoy it. It's one of 2 shows. The other one is the Top Back podcast, which I plan on collabing with in the very near future, right after Falcon and the Winter Soldier start, which I think is this upcoming weekend. But it's time for the Q&A segment, honorarily sponsored this week by Real Talk with Jam Podcast. You heard them earlier. That is John and Marcus. Make sure you check them out. Otherwise, this segment is wide open if you're interested in sponsoring this segment. You know what? I think I should make it until a company steps forward and wants to sponsor this segment. Let me know. Maybe I should make it open to people in the Hard Parking Violations Facebook group or somebody who wants to donate to the show $5 to get a section sponsored. There's still stuff I need. I need a sound blanket on the window. There's a lot of stuff that I still need to build out. Anyway, not a lot of time. I want to apologize to 2 people, The Dark Rican and Jason B. Godoy. You both asked some questions that require a little bit longer answers. Jason, maybe I will bring you on to answer your question and we can talk about it, because there's a lot of things we can do with the question of what does be the man mean? And The Dark Rican, maybe I'll do that next week as the topic of Hard Parking Podcast, The Other Side of the Wheel. So jumping right into this, Fielding Shredder, yes, the Fielding Shredder asked me a question on Instagram Live. Do you like the NSX better clean or with the wrap? Fielding, that's a good question as I sit here at my desk and I stare across the room looking at my big Valkyrie poster of the NSX article from Pass Mag back in 2018. I'm looking at it and man, I really like the car clean, but I do miss the wrap. I miss the wrap because so much of my childhood, my passion, and my creativity is wrapped up in that build. Every square millimeter of that wrap I designed, and everything of the interior to the seats, the heads-up display, everything was carefully thought out and planned, and I brought a really cool team together of my friends, and we just worked on everything together. If I keep the car, maybe I'll wrap it again because the VF1S NSX has kind of taken on its own brand online. I mean, I have 2 miniatures of the car that anyone can buy off of eBay as long as they're still out there. And I have a few other things in the work specific to the VF1S NSX. So, man, that's a great question. And I went from never being 100% sure I wasn't going to wrap it again because I didn't want to spend the money to getting a few offers for sponsorships to kind of help offset that. And now I think about it more than I ever thought I would, because with its ghost stickers right now, it looks pretty cool. I did have it just black and I thought it was boring, and it's really hard to go from something that it was visually to something that it is. So I had to bring some stuff back, and I brought it back because of the online brand that it's developing around the world. And it's weirdly becoming more popular now than I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when I first did it. Jason the Stark asks, what's the best race scene ever filmed? I thought about this because as the movie industry gets better and fans demand more immersion feel, more realism, even when it's obviously fake, it still wants to feel real. There's a lot of things to pick from, but I'm going to go with Ford v Ferrari. It had some really, really, really good race scenes in there with, if I recall correctly, little to no CGI. And even the movie Rush with Niki Lauda, the Niki Lauda story, had some really cool race scenes. Mimi, Ride or Die, asks, what's the most embarrassing moment in front of someone you admire? I answered this for her and for everybody who was on the Instagram Live on Wednesdays, One Drink Wednesdays with Jay and Wes Tankersley, 6:30 Mountain Time, by the way. But the most embarrassing moment in front of someone I admire is I was at an Acura party, Monterey Car Week, and I'm walking with my head down. I think I was on my phone texting somebody. And it's a small party. There's only like probably 65, 70 people here, and it's filled with all sorts of people. Like I had no business being there, although I went 3 years in a row, but I still had no business being there. And I bumped into Adam Carolla. So that was pretty embarrassing because that's one person I saw there. I was like, holy shit, Adam Carolla's here. I got to find a way to make conversation with him. I just want to talk to him. And I end up fucking bumping into him. RJ, friend of the show, owner of Kuya Automotive, where Big Brother's looking out for you, asked this awesome question. Where do you see Hard Parking Podcast in 5 years? I don't want interview style questions. You guys hear the paper bouncing around my new floor? Kenny asks, do you have an air fryer? Yes, Kenny, we have an air fryer. We got it a Christmas ago, and that thing is used 2 to 3 times a day at minimum. Always use the air fryer. Those things are awesome. Dub asks, what car are you going to buy now? I'm going to tell you this, Dub. I'm going to tell everybody. I'm not going to tell you what major car I'm looking to buy and put a deposit on once it's announced in the next few months. But I can tell you that I'm looking to replace my Infiniti FX35 Sport with an Infiniti FX50 Sport, and I'm very aggressively searching for it as we speak. Got approval on it, and the money, and I'm just waiting to find the right one. Had one flake on me because he didn't want to sell his car at the last minute, and I have another one that I lowballed the offer. Some other kid came in, gave a deposit. I'm ready to pay, but he already did the deposit, so I missed it on that one. Last question from Byron Jones. So guys, if the name Byron Jones sounds familiar, he was on the student loan forgiveness episode. It was Byron and Brian. So that's the most popular episode I think we've ran in the last 60 days. So Byron asks, if you could pick any car, infinite budget, what would you pick to do the Cannonball Run, which is from New York to California? So those of you who aren't familiar with the Cannonball Run, it's a car endurance thing. I wouldn't have known about it except for when I was a child. The movie Cannonball Run, which was full of stars, was on, and then Cannonball Run 2, and then they started making movies after that that kind of mimicked it, like Rat Race and everything, where you get all these A-list and B-list actors and actresses, and they all get in cars and vehicles that race across country for prize money. So when you think infinite car budget, you think a lot of money, right? I mean, there's a lot of cars, a lot of vehicles out there, but I had to think about it. That is a long-ass trip. But I've taken enough road trips to appreciate not only the drive, but man, you want to be comfortable. So I decided to go with the Audi S8. That's right, an Audi S8. Used to be supercharged, now it's turboed. In fact, 563 horsepower, 590 foot-pound of torque. And I've actually mentioned the Audi S8 in a podcast many podcast episodes ago about that's kind of a car I would love to buy as a second car. It's a corner office car. I can't buy it now because I need an SUV because I go to Home Depot all the time, like all the time. And the fact that it's a twin turbocharged 4.0 liter V8, I would somehow find a way to squeeze even more power out of that thing. Maybe get up to 650. Because remember, I have all the money in the world, infinite budget. I would make that thing even more badass, more bulletproof. I would just put that bitch on cruise control at like 150 and just do it. And that is this week's Q&A segment. Don't forget to tune in every Monday. Next Monday, it's time for Hard Parking Podcast, The Other Side of the Wheel, which is the shorter version of the show. It's more car-centric. So I think maybe I'll take that opportunity to answer the Dark Recons question. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, make sure you subscribe to the show. Follow me on Instagram, NA2NSX, or JTravels, which is JHAE_travels. Subscribe to the YouTube page, Hard Parking Media or Hard Parking Podcast. You can find me both ways. I think the URL is Hard Parking Podcast. The page says Hard Parking Media, but once you get there, it will be obvious that it is me. Join me on Facebook, Hard Parking Violations. It's free. I want to thank our sponsors, Right Honda out of Scottsdale, Arizona, Higher Quality Detail, Booster Bath, 4-Wheel Online, Tongue Treats, Rides Sold, and our Patreon business supporters, Kuya Automotive out of Winter Garden, Florida. If you're in a position to help the podcast grow, join the Patreon for as low as $3 a month and get access to bonus audio as well as show swag. You can also just tell a friend to help the podcast grow because I can't do this without your word of mouth advertising. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody out there. Be safe. Don't drink too much green beer. Stay away from the green food. Let's do this. Let's grow this thing together. As a lot of you guys know, my daily driver is a 2007 Infiniti FX35 Sport. It's about time I put some money into it. Can't just drive the NSX around all the time looking nice. Want to get some wheels. For over a decade, 4-Wheel Online has been bringing the best truck accessories and truck parts to enhance the appearance and performance of all trucks and SUVs. They're dedicated to providing an extensive range of upgrades that will match any maker model on the road. Their truck products cover everything you need for a custom look and added functionality. I was talking about a wheel and tire package. Head over and use their configuration tool. They carry all the major brands of wheels and tires, so go get outfitted today. Visit them at 4-Wheel Online. That's 4-Wheel, singular, online. Are you tired of your dog losing its cool in a thunderstorm or fireworks? You might want to look at Tongue Treats. TongueTreats.com. High anxiety relief, pain relief, inflammation relief. It's a direct connection between the tongue and the brain. Doesn't waste time going down to the stomach, where it gets broken down, enters the bloodstream, then to the brain eventually. By then, little Izzy, my dog, has been hiding under the house for like 20 minutes. The Tongue Treat CBD strips provide rapid results for your pet with the right amount of CBD, which is not psychoactive. It's important to test and verify your pet is getting the proper dosage. A single strip should be enough. Have doubts? There's certified analysis from a lab available on the website. Think about it. Efficacy and economy. Tongue Treats.